Welcome to the Heavenly Treasury broadcast where we help believers achieve God's financial abundance for your life. Today we're going to be talking about money versus wealth. Are they the same to you? When somebody talks about wealth, is that the first thing you think of as money? When somebody tells you about money, is that the first thing you think of as wealth and the nice stuff that goes along with it? Or do you put them in two distinct categories, all right? Because that's a lot of believers really have a struggle with this, and for rightfully so, because a lot of the times when people think wealth, they just think the pile of money and nothing else, and what money can do for you. Because remember, money, the reality is money is a tool, and on this broadcast, we're going to teach you how to use that tool the way the Lord wants you to, based on His word and His word alone. But what money really gives you above anything else is choices. It gives you choices. When you have no money and you live somewhere and you have nothing to your name, you don't have a lot of choice in terms of what you can do, how you can live, where you can live, what you choose to do with your kids, all that stuff. It really limits your freedom, so to speak, all right? And we're going to talk about freedom quite a bit today, and not in the way you think, because modern day freedom is very, very different than the old freedom. I hate using the word old freedom because it's not really old per se, but the antiquated view of freedom, so to speak, that our founders of this country really had when it came to freedom. Because if you ask some people today, what's your definition of freedom? It's doing whatever I want, whenever I want to. Other people in today's society, what's your definition of freedom? And that's using whatever bathroom I want to. Now you may think that's really, really stupid and strange, but that's somebody's view of freedom, because one man's freedom is another man's restriction. All right? Just think about that. One man's freedom is another man's restriction. And so if you're going to have a unified society, you're going to have people with a very similar view of freedom. Some people's view of freedom is to be able to show naked women on regular broadcast television. And again, somebody may view that as freedom. Now that's a very satanic view of freedom, but it is somebody's view of freedom that we live with in our society, whether you like it or not. So we all have to have a very unique view and a very structured view of freedom. I know it seems like an oxymoron to say structured view of freedom, but think about it. My definition of freedom is doing what you ought and doing what the Lord has called you to do and becoming who you were born to be. And anything restricting what God commanded you to be and who you were born to be, in my opinion, that's restriction. All right. So if the Lord has called you to be a doctor in some way, shape, or form, guess what? Any restrictions that society or anybody else imposes to stop you from doing that, in my opinion, is anti-freedom. Okay. And so again, we're going to be talking about freedom from the Lord's perspective today. That has a lot to do with money versus wealth, because again, money gives you choices. That's the number one thing it gives you is choices. Okay? When you have a lot of money, you can do whatever you want with your time. You can't quite do that when you have no money, because you're going to be required to have money to eat, to live, to do all that. Now, all right, technically you don't have to have it. There are people who just live in the woods and just live off the land. Not putting those people aside, all right, if you're going to have the abundance that the Lord wants you to have, you're going to need some money. And we're going to be talking about that. And there's a reason for that. Because again, if you don't care about money, you can't tell me you care about people either. Because the best way to care for people is the things that money can buy. Now, I'm not talking about cars and houses, although that's part of it. But at the same time, if you're going to help somebody get Bibles who don't have them, it's going to require money to purchase those Bibles and give to them. If you're going to send the gospel out to the third world, guess what? You need to pay somebody to get them out there. That requires money, okay? Or you have your own plane. That requires money too. So again, we're going to be talking about this quite a bit, and because I really want you to get focused on the way the Lord wants you to view money rather than the way you want to view money, because there is a very, very large difference, okay? And today we're just going to be talking about the difference between money and wealth, all right? So money, again, it's the dollars in your bank account. It's what you can do with it, what you can buy with it. If obviously you're part of the world, you leverage it to make even more money and all that, and spend money to have your experiences, to live, for your food, your clothing, your housing, your vacations, your jewelry for your spouse, all that stuff. Okay, that's money. I think most of you can at least get a good understanding of what money is per se. Because have you ever thought about why we have money to begin with? Why our society has money? Because when the Israelites were traveling through the desert, they had no money per se. They had the gold and silver that the Egyptians gave them, and they took from the Egyptians on their way through the promised land, the Bible tells us. But in terms of money itself, didn't really talk much about that, all right, when it comes to the Israelites traveling through the desert. However, by the time the New Testament comes around in Jesus' time, it talks a lot about the temple taxes, which were paid with silver, which was money. It talks about giving to Caesar what Caesar is due. That's money, okay? So there's money involved in our society, but why is that? Okay, and the example I want to give is, say, the American settlers who first got to this country, before there even was a country. Let's take Jim, and Jim has his field. He's got his house, but Jim wants some chairs. Jim wants some chairs for his house. He doesn't quite have the time to do it, nor does he have the skill to do it. So he wants chairs, and he doesn't have, again, time or skill to be able to do that. But his neighbor Bob does have chairs. So how does Jim get chairs? Well, this is before money, right? Putting money aside. There's no US dollars, nothing. There's no silver and gold coins, nothing. How does Jim get Bob's chairs that Bob has? Okay? Jim has to give something that Bob wants in exchange for those chairs. Let's say Jim has an abundance of eggs that he can trade for those chairs. Well, guess what? If Bob doesn't want eggs, guess what? Jim's out of luck. All right, so Jim has to find and create something that Bob wants to accept as payment for the chairs. All right, and that's just two people in a very small society with two items. Now imagine a country that we have with over 300-something million people, and I don't know how many millions, if not billions, of products and services in our society. Imagine those exchanges, all right? Every time you went to the grocery store, if the owner of your grocery store did not accept money, you would have to give the grocery store something that they wanted in exchange for something that you want from their store. So imagine going to the butcher and saying, I want some steaks. Well, the butcher, in a moneyless society, you would have to give something that the butcher wants in exchange for those steaks. And let's say all you had was the ability to repair pipes or the ability to fix electric. Well, if the butcher didn't need that service, you're out of luck without money. But what you can do is you can give money to the butcher in exchange for those steaks, and then the butcher can then use that money to buy whatever he desires or needs. All right, so that's why we have money to begin with. All right, that's why we have money. And again, money is very, very different today than it was when it first started in our society, the American society, so to speak. There's a great free video online by Irwin Schiff. I don't believe he's alive anymore, but he has a book that was called How an Economy Grows and Why It Doesn't. It's maybe an hour 15 minutes long. It's on YouTube and it's free. Again, it's called How an Economy Grows and Why It Doesn't. And so if you YouTube that and just watch that, you will get a very, very easy sense of how money works in our society. If you're really curious about it, because I will tell you this, that 1 hour and 15 minute video or so is more valuable than a 4-year economics degree. I'll tell you that right now. A free 1 hour video is more impactful for your life when it comes to money in our society today and how economics works than a 4-year degree. I don't care where the degree is from. Okay? So again, that's really, if you want to get to know how money works, I just gave you a very brief overview. A lot more goes into it with investments, debt. As much as I don't like to say it, debt is a big part of our society, all right? And all that. So that's money. Wealth, okay? Wealth. What do you think of when you first think of wealth? Most people think of just a big pile of money. That's what most people do. If I have $10,000 in my bank, guess what? My wealth is $10,000. I go spend $5,000 of that on a vacation. Now my wealth is $5,000. Okay. I go and complete a job for $15,000. Now my wealth is $20,000, and so to speak. That's how most people will view wealth. That's not quite how the Lord views wealth. Okay. All right. And here's ultimately why. Let's go to a couple of scriptures really quick. And we're going to go right here first. No, we're going to go here first. Okay? This is Proverbs 10, verse 22. If you've heard any money scriptures, this is likely going to be one of them. It's the blessing of God makes one rich, and he adds no pain with it. Okay? The blessing of God makes one rich, and he adds no pain to it. What does that mean? It means rich is going to be an abundance of money. And the Lord says he adds no pain to it. Now, this is very key when it comes to wealth. He adds no pain. For a lot of you right now, you're watching and you believe you're rich. Right? And in your eyes, you're rich. And that's awesome. I'm really glad you're there. The second part of that verse for you is going to be more important and adds no pain with it. Because I can tell you this, most rich people in our society have some problem with their lives that they would love to fix that money cannot fix. I guarantee you every single one. It's either they lack time, they lack good relationships, they lack a good relationship with their kids. They live in they're locked into a geographic location that they can't move around to, so to speak. All right, so again, in my opinion, most rich people have some issue in their life that money cannot solve. That's why this verse is so important, because once you get there, okay? Because remember, last time we talked about guaranteed multiplication. Guaranteed multiplication. And multiplication is exponential. All right. Addition is straight line. That's where most of the world is. The people who are doing well financially, at least that we think are doing financially, did it with addition. They just kept earning and earning and earning the same thing. If not, maybe a little bit of raise here and there and all of that. That was the world. All right. God is multiplication. And we showed you that with that example, because the guy who starts out with $1 gets $1 a day for the rest of the month. At the end has $30. The guy who starts with a penny and gets it doubled every day ends up with over $5 million. So that was the difference. If you haven't seen that video yet, I would highly recommend you do it. Highly recommend you do it. It's very informative, very eye-opening, and it's really, really, really going to hit your spirit. It is. So what this is again, the second part is and adds no pain to it. Because again, I can't tell you how many people who are watching this right now, if you tripled your income today, you would be at divorce court tomorrow. If you triple your income today, you would be in divorce court tomorrow. And that's not the way the Lord wants, which is why a lot of you are just spinning your wheels. You've literally committed your entire life to the Lord. Every single piece of it, your money, your time, your relationships, your property, all of it, your income, you give and you give and you give. You're a tither. You on top of that, you give offerings when the Lord hits your spirit to give. You give cheerfully. You believe in the 100-fold. You believe in the abundance. You know it's true because the Lord said it, but you're still not going up. And I'm telling you, this is it. It adds no pain to it. There is some part of your life that the Lord sees, but you may either don't see or haven't rectified yet, that's keeping you where you are. If you're in that place and you know the Lord wants to bless you and you are wholeheartedly committed and you're praying and you're fasting and you're doing everything you should be doing, you're working unto the Lord, you're doing what he's called you to do, you're executing every single thing the Lord asked you to, but you're still not seeing the abundance, this is likely why. There's some part of your life that still needs refining. Some part of your life still needs refining. And we're going to focus on that when it comes to wealth. Because you cannot build a great, great mountain of wealth in your life if you have pain with it. Not with the Lord. You can do it with the world, but not with the Lord. Because again, most people, even if people who make obscene amounts of money with the world and don't do it with the Lord in any way, shape, or form, they're going to end up either broke, or their children or their grandchildren are going to end up broke after they've inherited all that money. Okay, that's why it's so important to fix this now, because you right now are the cornerstone for your future generations. Every single child and grandchild that comes from your loins or your wife's loins are going to have great, great, mighty success because of what you're doing right now. Because of what you're doing right now. And and your children and your grandchildren will never ever face the problems you are today because of what you're doing right now. And the Lord is going to help you. And they're going to achieve something so great and so massive that when you're in heaven looking at their success, you're going to be so, so pleased with yourself. And the Lord's going to be pleased with you too. Okay? Because again, we've talked about this quite a bit that the Lord is definitely a family-oriented God. The God loves families. God loves children. Okay? And that's a lot of the reasons why you see in our media why most people are just hell-bent, so to speak, on destroying families and destroying children, because they know that the blessing of the Lord is going to add great and mighty things to your children that you would never be able to achieve. Okay? So that's part of wealth too. So in my opinion, yes, I could give you my opinion. You see all these books behind me? All right? Now, I will tell you this. Most people who have these have probably not read most of them. They're either gifts or they look good on the back shelf. They need to fill something. All right, yes, I could fill this row, and this row right there with a bunch of books. I could. And just go to some used bookstore and just have some great titles and they'll just look good behind me on camera. I could. But I will tell you this. I have read most, if not all, of these books. Every single one of them. Every single one. There are a couple political books. They're hidden behind me. Not going to show them. All right, because again, we don't talk about politics here. We'll talk about political decisions and how they affect your wallet, your money, and our society when it comes to that particular viewpoint. But we're not really going to focus on that today. Yes, I will talk about things. You know, when Hamas attacked Israel on the beginning of October, I did see a story came out later that people had foreknowledge of that attack and shorted the Israeli stock market to make money, and lots of it. Okay, because there's tons and billions and trillions sowed in the markets. All right, and so if you have foreknowledge of where markets are going and you can bet in that direction, or I wouldn't say bet, but put a position where you profit when something goes in your direction, there's a lot of money to it. And instead of notifying the public about that, they chose to profit. Now, maybe if I'm in that position and I know in advance that there's an attack coming and I can profit from it, maybe if I do show the public, I end up getting Epsteined. I don't know. It really depends, because I'm never going to be in that position. Likely not. Now, the Lord may put me in there at some point, but right now I'm not in that position where I have foreknowledge of some attack somewhere or some market force that's going to buoy my net worth all the way up into the trillions overnight. But some people did, and they profited from it. That, to me, those are things I will talk about, because again, it affects you, it affects your money, it affects our society. All right, but in terms of, you know, who won this debate last night, or who's going to get elected here, and this congressional district, and how all this is going to affect you, I don't talk about that here. I really don't, because I'll tell you this: when I first got into the marketplace, working on my own and not being supplied by my parents, okay, I want to say it was right at the end of Bush 43. So I would say in the 2006, 2007 area was when I really started working for myself and making my own money. Now, I was making something there. It wasn't a lot like I am today, but I was making something. Then Obama gets in, right? And I start making more under Obama than I did under Bush. Made more in the second term of Obama than I did under the first term of Obama. Then Trump gets elected. I was making more under Trump than I did under Obama. Then Biden gets elected, okay? I'm making more under Biden than I was under Trump. So, I mean, the word holds true no matter who the president is. It really does. If you go back and even look at 1st and 2nd Kings, it goes from good king to really bad king, to really bad king, to really bad king, and then into a good king, and then a bad king, and then a really bad king. And all that, so to speak. There are people in that society profiting under every single king, no matter what they did. And that's the same with you. Because again, that's why I don't focus on the politics. Because politics, and again, it's going to focus on your current situation or even backwards, as opposed to the Lord's word, which moves you forwards. That's why I don't focus on that, all right? And I'm going to continue belaboring that point quite a bit. Now, again, when it comes to maybe an election time, if the Lord speaks to me to make a topic that's related to an election, I will talk about that. And he has spoken to me about this because, again, next month is going to be Iowa caucuses. It's going to be steamrolling into another political season, particularly with the president, so to speak. Again, I'm not following it. I don't really care one way or the other right now. There's a lot to be determined. This time 8 years ago, Donald Trump was still, even he was leading in polls, but Everybody still thought he was just a joke because nobody had ever run like that before. Nobody had talked like him before and all that. But, I don't talk about that. I really don't. Because, again, when you focus on the word and what the word has for you, it doesn't say, well, the blessing of the Lord makes a man rich and has no pain to it only if the leader serves the Lord. That it doesn't say that. It says the blessing of the Lord makes a man rich and adds no pain to it. Yes, leaders will I'll have policies that will affect you personally. But in terms of the abundance that the Lord has for you, no, it has no bearing whatsoever. Okay? Now, maybe if you're in government contracts and you wholeheartedly depend on a president with a policy, all right? Typically, for example, Republicans will focus on oil. When it comes to energy, they'll focus on getting as much oil as you possibly can. Now, if you're an oil executive and now a Republican's in, well, guess what? Now you're pumping a lot more oil, which usually means more profits. Now, if you're in the Democrats and you're a solar guy or a wind guy or a renewable energy guy, now you get contracts and boosts and tax credits from them. So again, yes, there are people who will benefit based on policies put into place, but in terms of where the Lord has for you and his abundance, if you tithe, God's not going to say, oh, well, I've got to close the windows of heaven because Donald Trump's in office. Or now I'm going to open them up again because Kamala Harris is in office or something like that. No, there's none of that. The Lord opens the windows of heaven when you give him 10%. I don't care who's in office. I don't care who's in charge. None of that. Follow the Lord, focus on him, and everything's going to be okay. Stop focusing on that garbage. It's not going to help you. Focus on the Lord and your pocketbook. It'll help grow. Okay? So, with that being said, wealth. Okay? What I want to do is I'm going to take a book from behind me. Okay? It's a book from the husband of one of my first business trainers. All right? His name right here, True Wealth Formula by Hans Johnson. Okay? This is a book. I bought it almost immediately after it came out. I actually read this while my wife was in labor. Okay, for our firstborn daughter together. Okay, when she was there, I was in the hospital room. A lot of waiting going on. Any fathers know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not doing a home birth and you have a hospital birth, there's a lot of waiting going involved, and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, especially for your wife to get full 10 centimeters dilated for the baby to come out, and then even after the baby comes out. Guess what? There's still a lot of waiting because you have to wait for a day or two for everything to settle down, so to speak, so your wife and you and the baby can now go home. So there's a lot of waiting involved. That's when I was able to pick this up and read it for the first time, for all the way through. And one of the chapters in here I really like is a passage on building your foundation before you can build wealth. Because like I said, the blessing of the Lord makes a man rich and adds no pain to it. Here's some of the practical examples. And this is really what I want to focus this broadcast on. Practical examples that are going to help you with your life today. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. That's what I want to focus on. And we're going to focus on that every single day that I do the broadcast. Every single day. All right? If you got questions in the chat, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'll get to them at the end if you have any. Okay? But I want to talk about this because I can't put this any better than he can. So I'm going to use his words right here. Again, just in case you missed it, True Wealth Formula, all right? How to Master Money, Live Free, and Build a Legacy by Hans Johnson, okay? And here it is. When it comes to wealth, where would you place money on your priority list? Would it be number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, okay? Probably not number 1 anymore after you saw that verse that we've gone over the entire time. But here's some other ones. This is straight from his words. You may define the spiritual in another way. This is something that each one of us decides for ourselves. For me, spirit is number 1 when it comes to defining what true wealth is. Okay? So the first has to do with spirituality. He talks about our creator, Yahweh El Shaddai. Okay? That's number 1 on his list. Number 2 on his list is health. Okay? And he says someone may have all the money in the world, but if they're in poor health, they're not going to be able to enjoy their wealth. That is very, very true because a lot of people are built right now. You could be listening right now and you're building a great company and you've got a lot of employees and you're doing fantastically well. The cogs are turning, you're growing, and it's fantastic. But it's at the cost of a lot of stress, a cost of a lot of health Because I will tell you this, number one cause, one of the big, I'm not going to say number one, but one of the biggest causes of heart attacks is stress. Because a lot of stress means you got to pump a lot of blood throughout your body physically. Your emotions are just going to start, you're going to start shivering, and you won't be able to calm down in any way, shape, or form. And if you're moving a lot all the time, that's going to require blood pumping. And where does your blood come from? Your heart. Okay? Anybody who's exercised for any period of time knows your heart rate rises. Why? Because you're using calories and you're burning fat and you're building muscle and you're using the physique that you have. Every time you use your physique, it requires more blood. More blood means the heart has to pump more. But there's a time when you stop exercising after 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours if you're a professional athlete, something like that. But again, you stop, and that's when your heart gets to rest. If you're stressed all the time, your heart never gets to rest. And your heart is a muscle, and your heart has to rest. If your heart cannot rest, then you get a heart attack. And again, that's a big, big problem, because you could literally be building that great company. You're so stressed out, and you finally sell it, and you got a great exit. You now have $300 million to your name. Guess what? You're at 45 and you sell it for $300 million. Guess what? You're dead at 50, because your heart, you literally have an 85-year-old heart and a 45-year-old body. And your heart is not an organ that you can live without and not have it function properly. Okay? So that's something I really want you to focus on if you are making a ton of money, but it's costing you your health. All right? You've got to focus on your health. And number one, it comes with spirit. You've got to be able to start praying every day. You've got to start being able to get in the Word every day. You've got to have an hour or two for yourself where you turn off all of your electronic devices. If you're in this position, you have to be able to turn your electronic devices off for an hour or two, put on some calm music, and just stop and just close your eyes and just lay down and rest. And let the Lord speak to you. Let the Lord speak to you. He will. All right? And He will give you steps to be able to reduce that stress, calm your heart, so you can live that long, prosperous life that the Lord has for you, from Psalm 91 to Psalm 92. Okay? So if you're in that position and you're watching me right now, that's your next step. Stop watching me right now if that's you right now. Okay? And just do exactly what I just described. Turn this off. If you're in your office and you're even at your desk at your work and your office and you got 500 or 600 employees, just cancel your meeting for the next 2 hours. Just close your eyes. Put on some prophetic music that's calm, and 2 hours. I would go to 2 hours worship rain. Go YouTube 2 hours worship rain, and just sit there and just think and just let your mind go. Let your mind go. Listen, 2 hours is not going to kill your business. It's not, especially if you've been stressed for years. So that's your goal right now. If you're doing that, stop watching and go do that. Okay? But let's say your health is really good. Hans then says 3 has to do with family and relationships. I think everyone would agree that family and relationships are a part of true wealth. When people are on their deathbed, they generally don't say, "I wish I made more money." Instead, they usually say they wish they spent more time with the people they love. That's very, very true. All right? Because again, I've talked about this a lot, that God does not want you to be alone. If you're a stock trader right now, and you're making $1 million a month, guess what? And you have no friends. You go to work and your only friend is your computer. That's all you do. You go to the trading, you make a lot of money, and you just have fun. You're on the video games. Let's say you're going to Bora Bora next week, or you're going to the Maldives, and you're going to the Muraka, and you're going to stay at that underwater hotel for the next week. If that's you right now, you need to build some relationships. The Lord's going to help you with that, because I'll tell you this. There are a lot of professions, and again, stock trading just comes to mind. Crypto trading, options trading, futures trading, all of that comes to mind, where you can make an obscene amount of money without talking to a soul. And that's possible. Now, you may not think that's possible, but it is. That's not how the Lord wants you to get rich. He doesn't. Because He wants you to be that light on a hill. You can't be a light on a hill if nobody knows who you are. All right? I've seen a lot of people who have apartments at Trump Tower right now that are multi-million-dollar apartments, and they make $1 million, $2 million a month in the stock market. And they're making obscene amounts of money, but they have no relationships with anybody. The only relationship they have is with the charts and the indicators. That's all they have. You need to start building relationships. And it's going to help you significantly. It's even going to help you more with your trading because now, guess what? People are going to know you. Now, if you commit your ways wholeheartedly to the Lord, you're not going to get people in your life that are just going to ask you for money. That's probably why you started doing that, because you're making a lot of money. You don't want to tell people you're making a lot of money because guess what? Now they're going to want your money. If you sit down to the Lord and say, Lord, thank you for the great relationships you bring me. Thank you for your promise in Mark 10 that if I leave everything behind and follow you wholeheartedly, I would get 100-fold increase in all my relationships that I left behind. Say that to him and you will get relationships and it'll be fantastic. You're going to have such a much better quality of life. And you're not going to die alone. You're not going to live alone. You're going to have a partner that's going to love you and honor you and cherish you in every way, shape, and form. You're going to love them and you're going to find a purpose for all that money you're making besides just your own personal pleasures. You are. Okay? So that's number 3 for Hans's book. Number 4, he says personal liberty and freedom. Okay? Personal liberty and freedom are number 4 on my list. They are part of true wealth because if we don't have the freedom to take risks, like starting a new business, we won't be able to solve problems in the marketplace or create opportunity for ourselves and others. And I talked about this on the last broadcast too. About being a master in the marketplace, and that's one of the very first broadcasts I did. If you're in there, go to Reignite Your Dreams Part 3. I talk about being a master in the marketplace. All right, and you'll learn about that quite a bit and why we want to be a master. Because again, if you're gonna get obscenely rich, which I know most of you want to do, you're not gonna do it. You're not gonna do it slowly. The preparation may be slow, but the time it takes for you to go from a little bit to a lot. I mean, like a little bit to an obscene amount. Most people, that goes very, very, very quickly. It goes very, very, very quickly, okay? And for you to be able to get rich, it goes very, very quickly. Now, again, that's just the topic for another broadcast. But again, here we go. All right, so that's wealth. That's the 4 things right there that I just showed you that, according to Hans, and I happen to agree with this list. I do. Maybe not in that order, but spirituality definitely one. Then health, relationships, and then personal freedom. All that came before money. Okay, and his 5th one, I closed the book already. His 5th one was financial independence. So that's where money comes in. Okay, that's a great list and a great order when it comes to wealth. And that's why the blessing of the Lord makes a man rich and adds no pain to it. Guess what? If those first four areas are in order, the spirituality, the health, the money, the personal relationships, and the freedom to be able to live the way you want to live and to become who you were born to be, if those 4 areas are in line, then that's where the no pain comes. Because if you triple your income today, one of the first things you should do after giving and thanking the Lord is blessing your family. And that means your family has to be very, very strong, both with your spouse and with your kids. And most of the people watching this are probably men, so better relationship with your wife. You should want to bless your wife. Okay? If you got a $100,000 bonus tomorrow and you spend none of it on your family, especially none of it on your wife, you got a problem. You got to fix that now before the $100,000 comes. That's maybe one of the reasons why you haven't got that $100,000 bonus yet. That $100,000 harvest that the Lord wants to give you. He does. He wants to bless you. He wants to bless his children. But he's not going to do it if it's going to add pain to your life. And he's not going to do it if you don't have your priorities in check. Right? So that's when it comes to money versus wealth. Because wealth is the ability to make choices not just for yourself, but for your generations to come. Okay? Money is the choices. The wealth is going to give you the purpose to be able to live an abundant, fruitful life today and for your children to come. Because you're going to teach your children how to take that wealth, build upon it, and then leave something even bigger for the next generation. Why? Why do we do that? Because that's how we can expand the kingdom most effectively. That's why God put it in his word. Beyond just to bless your family and have them live a great life that you didn't. It's so that with those additional resources that your children and your grandchildren are going to have, beyond the wisdom you're going to impart to them, that means they can achieve something that you cannot. They can use those resources for some other method and purpose that you wouldn't be able to do because you don't have them. All right? If your parents didn't leave you with that pile, You're the one that has to create the pile and then give the wisdom to your children to be able to build something even better for the kingdom. Because if your children start out with $3 million to their name before they're even born, they can do something a lot more special than you did who got nothing. And for some of you who grew up in a single parent household, which is most of you, you are really behind the 8 ball. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you just have all of your children living in your household and you and your wife are not fighting and bickering all the time, you're literally ahead of 90% of people. Do you understand that? If all you do is live together with your wife and your husband in harmony, just in harmony, you don't have to have some hot, sexy marriage, just something that's in harmony where you guys aren't fighting all the time. And when your children grow up in that household, I don't care if you're living in a shack, you're better than 90% of the people out there and their childhood. Just think about the standard that you're leaving for your children when you choose to leave them that great inheritance. All right. So again, that's a topic for another topic of another conversation. But I do want to end with the wealth, with one of the big verses that most people have heard when it comes to wealth. I've talked about this one quite a bit. It's Deuteronomy 8:18. But you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the power to get wealth, in order to establish His covenant, which He swore to your fathers, as it is today. All right. Again, when you have sorrowless riches, and again, one of my big visions for this broadcast and everything I do for the rest of my time on this earth is to help 1 million people double their income with sorrowless riches. Help 1 million people double their income with sorrowless riches. All right. And this is one of the reasons why. So you can give credit where credit is due to the Lord. So you can remember who gave you the power to create that wealth. Who gave you the power to create that wealth. Okay? That's why. Because when you do it the Lord's way, and you know He blesses you, it's one thing when you get tipped. It's another thing when God tips you. You know when you've been tipped. All right? If you're a waiter watching this and you get your 20% tips all the time, all right, you can tell you've been tipped. But now all of a sudden somebody gives you $500 tip. That's a tip. And you remember that. You remember that obscenely. You remember that obscenely. Okay? That's what you know. That's when you know the Lord's tipped you and tipped you well. So with that being said, I really want to make sure that you're on the right path, for your life, beyond just the money. I do want to make sure that today you are walking with the Lord wholeheartedly and with everything you have, okay? If you've never known the Lord who wants to bless you and give you the power to create wealth and give you great riches that have no sorrow, not just for yourself, but to advance a great and mighty kingdom and have a bigger purpose than yourself, to be able to utilize all of your resources and everything that you have to advance something that's good, that's noble, that's pure, that's praiseworthy, and something to be very, very special so that you can be a very important part. You and your skill set, you are very uniquely made, and you have a great and mighty skill that you have to utilize, not just for yourself, but for the Lord's kingdom, for something that's so much bigger than yourself that you're going to look back and say, wow, I can't believe what the Lord did through me. If that's you right now, and maybe you have forgotten about the Lord, I want to encourage you to go right below this broadcast. There's a link that says Get Saved. At the top of that link, there is a prayer. I would love for you to see that prayer through and read it wholeheartedly to the Lord, because Romans 10 does tell us that when we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord and we confess the forgiveness of our sins, that we are now saved and entering the kingdom of heaven. All right? And at that point, you're on a path that you can't even dream of. You're on a path and a life that you can't even imagine or fathom on your wildest days. On your wildest days. That's what the Lord has for you, and that's what the Lord is going to do through you for other people who can, again, live the great life that you're walking in right now and an even better one for the future. So with that being said, I hope you have a very blessed day. You guys are fantastic. Love the crowds. I just continue to thank you so much. If you did read that prayer and got saved, send me an email. Email is below with the link. So go ahead and send me an email. Tell me you just got saved. We'll give you some next step and some help and some direction. Thank you very much for watching today, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody.